Good morning. My name is Stephanie Rudman. I'm a certified art teacher in Wisconsin and New York State. So currently I am teaching lessons from my home to students K-6. And I want to share with you a lesson that is easily adaptable to any grade level, has great results, and you'll be using very reasonable supplies as far as expense goes. So hope you'll enjoy what I'm about to share with you and hope you'll be able to use it in some way. So let me get started. And usually I do post the learning target in my room so that students know and are able to see what we're going to be learning and accomplishing. So the learning target for this lesson, which is to use line and color to create and refine your artwork. So that comes from the National Core Art Standards. And standards are creating, presenting, responding, and connecting. And so today we are looking at the essential questions and standards over here. So creating, our essential question is, how do artists work? So we're going to talk a lot about that throughout the lesson. And then we're going to be creating using Anchor Standard 1 to generate and conceptualize artistic ideas and work. And we'll also be using Standard 3 in creating, which is refine and complete artistic work. So we'll talk about those. So we are using the elements of line and color. I love to integrate literacy when I can, so I have a couple resources here that I would spend time reading. You can use whatever resources you have available. I tend to pick up books either on Amazon reasonably or at area rummage and garage sales. So it's just a little collection I have referring to line and color. So the first project I'm going to share with you is a project geared towards kindergarten. And this is my finished exemplar for you to see. And it's basically glue and crayons or oil pastels. These supplies are fairly reasonable. Glue, I just, buy the big old one, wherever I can find it the cheapest. And then the crayons, I have a collection of older ones. These are Grumbacher, and then the crayon version. So I go to Blick Art Supplies downtown Milwaukee. They come in a variety of size sets, giving you fewer or as many colors as you want. So I'm going to show you how to start this particular project. We are talking about line as non-objective line. So when they create their line, it's not supposed to look like any recognizable object. And that's where we get non-objective from. It's not an object. All right. So they're going to have a bottle of glue. For the little hands, this is probably going to be a little hard for them. You may have to go hand over hand to help them. But you can get the very small glue bottles that are really easy for them to manipulate and manage. So they're going to take their glue and basically you're having them create one continuous line. So they're going to start and keep going and keep going and keep going until they filled the paper, not to go off the edge of the paper. And they can bring it back to where they began or, just end it next to a shape. So I'm gonna stand and, kind of do this. So I'm basically, taking the glue bottle and I'm squeezing it so I get a nice, thick, heavy glue line. And I am just going round and round and round without going off the edge of the paper. And then I'm gonna bring it back to the beginning and be done. Okay, so we'll close our glue up. We're done with the glue for this project. I'm going to set that aside. And what they're going to have when they've finished with that is something like this. Okay, they're just going to look a little bit different. You're going to have a spot for them to dry. And if that's in the classroom somewhere on a windowsill or whatever, that works best. It will take a day or two to dry. So what they can do in the meantime is take another piece of paper. They can draw with crayon using a black crayon and make a line that is non-objective and then just fill in those spots with different colors just to practice while that's drying. So they're still doing a project related When you have those dry, it is going to look or resemble something like this. Okay, so that's all dry. And I have another one here, slightly different. Okay, one important thing I should mention is they're going to all look somewhat similar, so please make sure that you have them put their name on the back before they begin. So you want to have them put their name on the back of the paper before they do the glue, and then they'll be able to recognize theirs when it's dry. You may do that with a white crayon on the back so that they can see their name on the black paper. And we don't sign the front of the work until it's finished. That way they can determine if it's going to be vertical, horizontal, which direction they want to view it for final presentation. That's part of the refining of the work as well. So with a non-objective piece, it may look better going vertical as opposed to horizontal. So you wait until it's finished to bring that name to the front for a signature. Okay, so with this project, they're using the glue and the oil pastels. I'll move that aside. So I like to distribute supplies so that all students can kind of reach and access them. And meat trays work great. You should not use a meat tray that's been used for meat or even washed because it will still have germs on it. What you can do is go to your meat department at your local grocery store, ask them if they want to donate to your school a package of meat trays. Typically, they're very good about doing that, and I usually try to write a note either from the students or whatever, thanking them for the supplies. So that goes a long way. And I've noticed too that our Dollar Tree has started selling meat trays as well. So you can get a giant stack for $1, so not a bad deal. When the students are done with their line portion, and again, it's a non-objective, not to look like anything, line, then they can begin to fill in the spaces that line has created with various colors. So the colors are, again, using the crayons, and they're going to want to lay down a good amount of color in each section. So I usually tell the students that if they're going to use a color, to think about other areas to use that same color. And then they're not picking up and putting down and picking up and putting down, so that they can maximize the use of their time more wisely and beneficially. So, so if I have this bright kind of orange here, and I'm going to pick a shape, and I'm going to fill it in. And I might pick another shape nearby, not right next to, because you don't want to have the colors next to each other that are the same, identical. And you want to, make sure that they're really putting that color down nice and thick. They're staying in the lines that have been created by. So I have colored in 3 pretty solid, and then I'm going to take, because they are oily and waxy, I can blend them. So I'm using just my finger. That tactily may be a little irritating for some students. They might not like that feeling, so they can wrap a paper towel around their finger and accomplish the same thing without that, kind of that irritation or sensation. Okay. So if the students are finding, well, it's not blending, Mrs. Rudman, I'm having a trouble with this, just tell them to put down more of the color, okay? And because crayons or oil pastels are soft nature, they can break. And as long as, I just remind the students, as long as it's not on purpose, that's okay. Things happen. So mine just broke. And, it's all right. So not a big deal. It can still be used. So again, blend and whatnot. So you're going to keep doing that until all your sections are filled in. So now I'm going to a green. And coloring. I'm going to do 2 areas like this. And I'm going to blend. Now if it's a darker color, this green is coming out a little bit, dark, I can blend and add a white to it to make it brighter. So I have a little bit of white here. And the white just is a nice way to have a color show up. You want to encourage students, because they're working on, I've chosen black paper, I just love the results, but because they're working on a darker paper, you want them to choose brighter colors. Now, this could be done on white paper, and I have done it in the past on white paper. The results just aren't as striking, so black works best. This paper is 12 by 15 inches, 12 by 15, and I just like this size, but 9 by 12 would be perfect. You can still get a really nice product with a smaller paper. I have put down some newspaper on the table just to minimize any mess that might occur. So, and for a later project, I'm going to show you it's there as well. So you just keep going until you finish, and you end up with a result, similar to what I showed you earlier. So that is the non-objective using line and color for kindergarten. So first grade, we're going to take a shape, and I've cut out a pattern. I am going to put this down on the paper. And then I'm going to take my black Crayon, my black oil pastel, and I'm going to trace this. So I'm outlining the shape, okay? And going around the outside and tracing this. So as soon as I'm done tracing, I will show you. Okay, so done with that. So I'm finished with the tracer. I can set that aside. And you have the option of having them kind of color in, creating smaller sections and just coloring those in solid, or creating more of a pattern. And you use line to create pattern. You use line to create shape. So we are sticking with our target, which is to use line and color. Now this project is a little bit different, and you could do the kindergarten project the same way. For this project, we are outlining with Crayon, and then we're filling in the spaces with chalk. I love chalk. Chalk just produces such a vibrant outcome. It's highly successful for students. It is a little bit messy. And I think that, people who are trying to teach an art lesson, want to stay away from this. But this is just so successful and so rewarding. Crayola comes up with, some very nice, brilliant chalk. I have, again, them on my tray for distributing, to the students who are working at the table. Nice assortment of color. I don't put out full sticks. I always break them because they're going to break anyway. So this way you can extend the supply life you have. So one stick of one color is going to, serve 2 or 3 kids. So chalk is fun to work with. Okay, so this one here has pattern, more intricate. If your students are looking for a challenge, students who are accelerated in art, they could be challenged to do this. Can have students divide your space into shapes, and I will do a little bit more for you to show you how to do that. So you're going to take one of those big shapes that they've kind of divided the leaf into, and they're going to divide it even, further into smaller shapes. Then using the chalk, they're going to begin to color inside those lines, those black lines, and put their layer of chalk. Chalk is dusty. And what they want to avoid doing when they're working with chalk is blowing it, because other students will be working nearby. You want to avoid just, smearing it, kind of wiping it and getting that dust off, because it'll smear the color all over your project. So if there's chalk dust on there, typically I just knock it off and onto the floor. Generally I sweep, and the floor will get swept, so it's not going to be a huge deal. If you have carpets in your classroom, though, that could be a bit of a challenge to kind of think through. Maybe you could find a different location to do the project. Okay, so once you've put the chalk in the area, then you're going to use a finger to blend it. And again, if this is a tactile kind of sensation that your students don't like, wrap a paper towel around there and you can achieve the same effect. Paper towel, Kleenex, whatever. So you color in the area and you blend it. Again, once you have that colored in, you'll have a beautiful project. You're going to take that black Crayola that you started with and you're going to define your work when it's done. Because if I present to you just my colors blended in, there's going to be smudges, there's going to be overlapping of, colors. I'm going to lose that black line. So you just take that Crayola and you go back over, and this is a good skill for our students to learn, is, they're kind of retracing what they've already done. They're not creating anything new. They're just bringing into focus what they've already done. So I've just done this little section down here. I'll keep going so you can see kind of the difference between an unrefined work and a refined work. The results are absolutely, breathtaking when you have a whole display of work that is finished. I always put out every single student's work on a display. And that's really important to me, to show all students' work. And I tell them that I, want them to use good craftsmanship. So redefining is a good key to doing that. So it's good craftsmanship. We're just really making the work look the best that it can look. So a lot of students want to stop short and say, oh, I'm done. And I'm like, nope, now it's time to refine and hone in on their actual, piece. So I have done a little bit of this at the bottom here. I have not yet done the top up here. And so it's a little fuzzy still up here, so you can kind of see the difference between a refined area and an unrefined. Okay, so that project, like I said, can be done to different levels of ability. Typically, when I'm done with a piece of work, I will either mount it onto a slightly larger piece of construction paper. It could be white. If your district is able to get you some matte frames, that's wonderful too. But even, just to mount it and have it on something to contrast will frame it in, and it will make it look like it's a real beautifully finished piece. So there are projects I have actually done. So I don't want you to think I'm, giving you, selling you a bill of goods here and telling you that, oh, these will be great. They will be. And I have always set clear and high expectations for my students. So they're able to, if we ask them to do, above, set that bar high, they will definitely rise to that occasion. It's a matter of keeping them on task and saying, okay, now you need to, recolor that. It's a little light. Go back, rework. That's part of being an artist. That's what artists do. They refine their work. They, go back. It's not just a quick, I've got it done and I'm all set. So the next project is geared towards second grade, and with my second graders, we begin to talk a little bit about realism and how we can make things look more like they look in real life. And that could be done with still life, it could be done with, landscapes, seascapes, that type of thing. So this could be adapted to any type of subject matter. Just so happens that I'm, kind of using a landscape. So again, black paper. This is the 12 by 15, and it's the same process. So little different skill. I am going to be talking to them about a horizon line, what a horizon line does. So second grade, we're going to talk about that line and what that line does to establish a landscape for us. Well, it separates the sky from the ground. So it's very simply captured by either choosing to do our art vertical or horizontal, so verticals up and down, horizontals across. They can choose, make that decision themselves. So the horizon line should be somewhere toward the middle, and it can be a curved line to separate, can be a straight line. Thinking about the sky, what's above the horizon line, well, there might be a sunset, there might be clouds. So the sun, if it is setting, is it going to be at the horizon line so you're only seeing part of it? Is it going to be completely above the horizon line so it would take on the shape of a circle? When we're talking about having things look more realistically, if, for example, they're putting a sun in their sky, Yeah, we're not going to put a pie sun coming out from the corner because that is not realistic. When we look at the sky, we do not see it just in a partial pie shape. We don't see sunglasses on it and a smiley face. You know, those are types of things for cartooning, illustrating. But if we're going to try to do realism, then we really want it to look like the shape that it really is. And the sun is a circle. It's the shape of a circle. It's a sphere, but it's the shape of a circle. So I have, kind of a beginning type of sunset. So I could continue and have some having it look like the rays of the sun as it's setting are kind of arching over each other. And then I would use different colors as I color those in. Towards the top, maybe there's some clouds. So I'm going to kind of draw in, I should say, outline of clouds. Now, this technique is very forgiving. And what I mean by that is that if you decide that you don't want a line where you have placed it, chalk over it. And then when you refine it, you can outline it with the black the way you do want it. So that's how, it really is a great tool to use with students because they can have great success. So then below the horizon line where the ground is, I got to think, is it just going to be ground, or is there going to be a stream, or is there going to be a road? So in this case, I've got a little dirt road coming from the horizon line. In this one, I think I'm going to just do it as hills. So when they're doing hills, they're just going to maintain the line from the horizon. So I just continued with another curve, and then I, will color that. A little bit more complex version here just with the black. Then you can start to color that in. And with the chalk, you can, make it your own kind of scheme. This is brighter. I was thinking sunset, so I was using oranges and pinks and yellows, and then, thinking about how that would look on the hills below. Well, they might take on similar colors as well. So you might think of introducing a little bit about color theory and saying warmer colors are those colors that make you feel warm or hot. So reds, pinks, oranges, yellows, and then those cooler colors are, the blues and the greens and the violets. And again, if you want to color more than one section of color, stick with that color until you're done with it. And that'll maximize your time, your students' time. If it's too light, then you tell your students to add more chalk. That they really want to see the consistency of the chalk be the color that it is when they look at that chalk stick. Okay. So I don't get too awful dirty. I try to use one finger per color. Some nice bright purples here, so I'm gonna try those a little bit. Here we go. All right. Let me see how that blue is. That's the other thing is if they try a color and they're not crazy about it, again, it's pretty forgiving. So you can find the color you want and then start coloring it in. And I wasn't happy with the way I drew this cloud, so I'm going to make those changes as I go. And you get an idea. They all are produced the same way, basically. So whether you're using the oil pastels, the chalk, oil pastels are going to be a little less messy, but the result isn't quite as striking. So for my kindergartners who tend to get messy, just it's the nature of the age, I kind of stay away from the chalk until they're a little bit more skilled in using the materials. And then we do chalk, first grade, they're a little bit more ready for it. And then I'm going to do this one purple. So, okay. So there's the background. Okay. So, you'd continue, and I'll show you that refining occurs, and it really does make the work come to life. Because they're going over lines that they've already done, and they want to have that look accurate. So if they go too quickly, they're going to end up with, just a scribble. And I've had students before just draw very lightly with the black, and I'm like, I can't see it. It really needs to project, and it really needs to pop. So you've got to put a little bit of pressure on that. So hold it tight and, push down. All right, so there's that refined piece. Now I want to share with you a little tip too, that if your students end up with smudges on their work, now I'm not going to go wash my hands before I do this, but they should have clean hands. And if they have smudges or fingerprints, and I'm going to just put a few on this because this one has an outline to it. So, let's say we got some, somebody accidentally colored on our piece of paper that was sitting next to us, or our fingerprints, got all over it with the chalk. Pink pearl eraser, they're pretty reasonable. And you can just go in and erase. You can have the students do it. You can have, give them a hand doing it. And that cleans it up pretty well. Okay. So those are 3 examples. Now, if you have older students or you're switched to a different grade level and you have older students, and we were studying Picasso, so we did a little reading about him. This is done on white paper, so it's kind of giving you an idea of what it looks like. So the difference is, you get a little different result. Black versus the white paper. I'm going to share with you what a mounted piece of art looks like. It's when you're presenting some work. Presenting is also one of the National Core Art Standards. And if you're doing a gallery of student work outside your room or, in a library or somewhere, if you hang this up versus a finished work with, no frame. So, even though that's a nice piece of art, that your student may create, if it is so much nicer and more pleasing to look at. Okay, so that is just another tip. I also remind my students not to fold their artwork. It puts permanent creases and you can't get them out. So respect their work and leave it flat. This is laminated. In the district I taught in for several years, I had the ability to laminate their work to preserve it. Parents so appreciated it. So something like chalk definitely would need to be laminated because of the dust factor. However, being in my basement and teaching from here, I don't have the means to have a laminator. There are hairsprays, like Finishing Touch or something like that, a more of a vintage type of hairspray can help seal that chalk without some of those fixatives that, are put out, the more expensive cans of spray. They actually kind of delete the color. The hairspray has been found to actually seal it, preserve it, and keep the brightness. So that's another tip. Before I leave you, I just want to share taking a nursery rhyme, 1, 2, Buckle My Shoe, which Keith Baker, all different gorgeous patterns. So talk with the students about, utilizing that. So you draw, and here's an example where this is yellow paper, and you can go vertical with it. This is a piece of like a limey green paper. And so the students got to choose the color paper that they wanted and create their pattern. And they colored them in, and these were so fun. These were a lot of fun to look at, and the students really loved their work. So basically showed them, just how to start with the head, make a small head, and then a huge body. So this was fun too. So another little way to integrate your literacy and art together and using the same materials that I demonstrated. I just hope you have fun with it, and I hope you yield some great results and that your schools enjoy looking at your students' work.